Okay, we will go ahead and get started. I think I have everything set up on things working right. If you're seeing me talk and not hearing me speak, please poke it out in the chat. As we've done before, if you have questions you want to ask, but want to ask them anonymously, you're welcome to send a direct message to Alan Silver or myself, and we'll ask it on your behalf. We are recording this session so that others can catch up on it later. I think we'll see if Alan can share in the chat the link to today's agenda so we can get everybody on that. And otherwise, we will go ahead and turn things over to Sam Liston, who is going to lead our discussion today on Globus.
Thanks, Brian. Hope you guys can hear me all right. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. So today I was just going to talk a little bit about sort of our history with Globus. We've been doing it for a while. And then go through configuration. Just go through an installation of version 5. And give you an idea how that goes. And then kind of go through a walkthrough of the web interface. If you guys have questions, ask them as we go, I guess. So we stood up our first DTNs in about 2012. I was trying to remember exactly if it was like late 2011 or 2012. But anyway, it's been a while. It sort of coincided with us standing up a campus DMZ, a fast way out of off of campus that goes a different path than through the campus firewalls. Quickly after we set up these DTN, we had some of our large data users adopt them sort of in a large way. One of the largest was the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, SDSS. And within a little while, he was the user of the month, December 2013, because of the amount of data that Joel Brownstein, the head guys there, was moving. And then also like the CI Water Project, and then later the USTAR Center for Genomics Discovery started using Globus heavily. We quickly escalated having 13 DTNs, all having Globus endpoints. Many of these were dedicated DTNs for specific groups like SDSS. Some were dedicated for outward traffic, off campus and to remote sites, and others for inter-campus transfers that would stay inside campus firewalls. So here's kind of a list of what we have currently. We have one clustered set of endpoints. That's the airplanes. They're set up in a 4-way cluster on Globus version 4, as well as DTN 1 and 4, which are for off-campus, sort of standalone data transfer nodes. DTN 3, which is for inter-campus transfers. We have a lot of people moving stuff between our storage and places on campus that don't need to go through the firewalls. And then we have dedicated DTNs for SDSS and water. And then recently, within the past 2 years, created a protected environment which has its own DTNs. They are using Globus version 5, and yes, they're using Globus version 5, and because of the high assurance necessity for the protected environment. And then we also have one dedicated endpoint for that uses a Ceph plugin to our Ceph thing, and that's version 4 as well. So some considerations. I'm still on version 4, mostly for one reason, and that is the clustered component of Globus is not available in version 5 yet, as far as I understand. So I'm sort of dragging my heels a little bit and waiting for that to happen, and then I'm just going to move all my endpoints at once. Just that's my own stubbornness, I guess. Yeah, anyways, and then the other thing is all these DTNs on the DMZ are dual homed. And this is something you should consider if you plan on standing them up in this way. This essentially circumvents campus firewalls. That box is both outside and inside, has both outside and inside interfaces without using the firewalls. The inward path is necessary for us because we need access to our storage as well as to campus authentication services. It's just something to consider if you're looking to stand this up, just to make sure you have good IP tables or the like on those machines. And we sort of went through a process with campus to sort of green light this, that what we were doing was okay, that they were okay with it. Anyway, something to consider. So let's start going through the installation and stuff of version 5. There's some topology and some terminology you should know. In version 4, there was only one layer essentially, and that was the endpoint, and you would set those up. But in version 5, they've added some more layers essentially. There's storage gateways above endpoints, and then above that is collections, and there's 2 types, guest and mapped. And here's a nice little illustration that I got from the Globus website to kind of give you an idea. Down at the bottom, you have your data transfer nodes, and sort of this idea that the endpoint goes across them. I think it's probably future looking, that one day when clustered is available again. And then on top of that endpoint, you build storage gateways, and on top of those storage gateways, you have map collections of various types. Yeah, just good to know. Oh, sorry. Go back. There we go. Simple stuff. This is for CentOS, a Red Hat derivation of installation. Grab the EPEL repo, install it. Grab the Globus repo, enable a few subsections of that repo, install YUM plugins, and then install Globus Connect Server version 3. And let that go through the process. And you can follow the full instruction guide, which is great, at the link here, or Google search for Globus Connect Server 5 installation, and you'll find it. It also goes through other derivations, installations for Ubuntu, etc. After this, here's where some of the new stuff happens. You need to register your Globus Connect Server version 5 at the developers site. So navigate to developers.globus.org.
You should.
Hello? Oh. And there, you'll create a new project. First, you'll log in with your Globus credentials. This will help make sure that the subscription you have, that's actually something I should say, that all of this is dependent on you having all these instructions are dependent on you having a Globus subscription. I actually don't know what it looks like without a subscription. We've had one for years. And so these instructions are as if you had a Globus subscription of some sort.
Hey, Sam, we've got a question in the chat for you.
Okay, what is it? I can't see those, by the way, because I'm full screen.
It's okay. I'll chime in and get you.
Okay.
So, Evan asked if clustered endpoints only increase available bandwidth, or do they also distribute load, provide high availability? Can you describe that?
I would say yes to all 3, at least the version 4. Yes. Availability, absolutely, and bandwidth. There's a sense of parallelism across them. I kind of think it happens in a round robining sense. That is, say you had 10 files, one would go to 1, number 2 would go to 2, number 3 would go to 3, etc., and go through them. There's also parallelism at the endpoint itself. I'm not 100% sure on that, exactly how that works. But yes, what was the third thing? Availability, bandwidth, and what was the third part?
The distributed load.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I actually like it to use it a lot. It's also good for updates and things. You take one of the members away and not affect the others. Things can still go on in the other members of the clustered endpoint. Hopefully that answers your question. I like it. I'm really looking forward to it happening again in version 5.
Okay. So he asked the clarification of what happens when we lose one of the DTNs, one of the IO nodes goes down within the
Yes,
cluster.
right. I believe that that particular job would then pause. I hadn't really listened to this for a while. I think it would pause and probably wait for that DTN to come back. I guess eventually it would fail and maybe start again on another of the endpoints, another of the DTNs. Yes. I actually haven't looked at that scenario. What happened to a particular transfer? So,
I had thought we had done this, Sam, where if it dropped one, there went through a timeout before the error kicked in, and then it picked it back up on the remaining endpoints. And it looks like Voss is adding to that in the chat, and confirms it will retry it after a time.
Sure. I just didn't know how long it held on to say a particular. Say it's transferring one particular file, at that particular DTN. How long does it hold on to that before it decides it's not going to come back and moves that transfer to another of the DTNs? I'm not sure about that. Eventually it will, obviously. It won't hold up the whole transfer because the one file is still stuck on a DTN that hasn't ever come back. I just don't know the time frame of how long it holds on to it. Yeah. Does that sound okay? Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, good. Right. So you log in and you create add another project. And if you'll look at the page here, these are just screenshots from my particular page. I have quite a few under the HABAA heading. These are all high assurance endpoints that because of our subscription, because of our need in the PE, we have high assurance capabilities, which I believe for the most part keeps all of our all the parts of Globus and Amazon on servers that are local to the US. I believe that's correct. But there's also some other things as well. We've entered into a BAA with Globus in this process. Anyway, yours will vary. Yours will probably be different. Okay, and I've been making all of mine under the high assurance, even though some of them are not in the protected environment, just mostly for testing and experimenting. Yeah. One thing I have found is I have a hard time deleting these projects sometimes, and that's why I have so many and some redundant ones. Something I haven't figured out yet. Anyway, something to explore. So you'll create a new project. You call it something. Enter your email and it shows who are the admins of this particular project, and you'll create that. So now I have this Pando RGW LB02 project. And in there, you'll hit add and add a new Globus Connect server. And it will generate you a client ID and a client secret, which I didn't show you my client secret because, anyways, it'll be a long string like that as well. And you'll take these things and go back on your server, and you're going to edit Etsy Globus Connect server.conf. There's a few things you need to change in here or can change in here. First thing at the top, you're going to add your client ID and your client secret that were generated on the developer page. I tend to not change my endpoint names, just have it grab that short name and short host name and host name variables. But you can change them if you wanted to. Then you change the agree to the let's encrypt at the bottom there to say that it's okay to use the let's encrypt, okay to the let's encrypt terms and services. I also put the email, you change the email as well to your email. And then at the bottom, I tend to require encryption on all my endpoints just because it's a little bit of overhead, but I like the idea. It is definitely required in our protected environment, and I just tend to do it on all the other ones as well. Right, so now you're ready to create your endpoint. And so at this point, you'll run Globus Connect server setup. Sorry for the extra lines in my from the command line. I don't know what I did, but I should probably clean that up. Oh, I know why. I was checking to make sure my host name actually resolved to what I thought it did. That's right. I had some issues earlier. I have dual home stuff, and my host name was not set correctly, so I was, well, let me tell you what. So when you run this, it does a few things. It turns on some services. It then makes you I would call it a CNAME for your, according to your host name. This is where I ran into problems. Had a host name that was not what I wanted it to be, and it was creating a CNAME against that name versus sort of my public interface. Anyways, it'll make that for you, mostly for the HTTP stuff that you'll be able to do through Globus. And that would be the...
Uh-huh.
Oh?
For sure.
Yes?
Sorry, I just didn't get somebody muted.
Oh, no worries. Good. Let's see. Oh, right. So that is the name, the URL that you'll be known at. And they're all a globe.us domain name. And you'll also, when it's successful, it'll say created GCS endpoint, the name you gave it, the short name you gave it, and then it'll spit out this nice string for you to have, and you'll use that in a minute. Yeah. So now back on the Globus Web Portal, you'll log in to the regular globus.org page, and you'll go to endpoints over on the left and do a search for the name that you created. In this case, it was Pando RGW LB2. There it is underlined. You'll click that and select Edit Attributes. And according to your subscription, if you have that, you will click yes, this is a managed endpoint. This will allow you to do things to it, make changes, and actually add storage gateways and collections. So make that change and save changes. And here's what it spits out afterward. And managed endpoint, yes, by your subscription. And a subscription is a good thing. It allows you to manage endpoints, which I think is very helpful. There's features and things that are available according to your subscription. It also allows you to purchase additional plugins for other non-POSIX things like Google Drive and Ceph, S3. There's quite a few available if you have various storage platforms. Okay, so now back on your server. Here's the new part. It's not tricky. It's the most tricky part. It took me some experimentation to get this, and actually a few emails to Globus to get this the way that I want to function, the way I wanted it to. So the first thing you do is you need to add yourself as an admin to this endpoint. So you run Globus Connect Server Config, endpoint, admin, add role, and then the email associated with your subscription. And then it will add that administrator role to your endpoint. Notice that string is the same as that was spit out before. Now on top of now you have a fully functional endpoint. It's time to add some storage gateways. And this essentially is what you want to share. So the line below is a way to have, if you'll notice that root is slash, so the top of the tree, but then I restrict the path in a read-write fashion to both the place where we mount home directories as well as the place where we mount scratches. So they're restricted to those two branches of the tree. That my connector is POSIX, and my display name, and this is the name you'll see it on the Globus Web Portal, CHPC Pando RGW LB2 storage gateway. That my domain is utah.edu. What this says is that only people with accounts that end in utah.edu can access this. And then I turn on high assurance and have some flags that go along with high assurance. And then I also allow mapped and guest collections. And you could restrict this one way or the other, and I'll talk about what the difference is between the two in a second. And then you'll create that. And something I've noticed is that after you create your storage gateway, you can't instantly make a mapped collection. You have to wait, I think it's about 15 minutes before it'll let you. It spits out, I forget what it says. It says something like not available or something like that. So something's going on out in the ether that is being set up in this manner. But after about 15 minutes or so, you can create a mapped collection. So the difference between a mapped and a guest collection, mapped is for local users with local credentials. In our case, Untitled.edu folks. And a guest collection are created for those by those with admin rights on endpoints for users without local accounts. So for the most part, I go with map collections because guest collections can be a little bit of an administrative nightmare in that I have to give a person the right to make a guest collection, which for onesie twosie is great, and I will do that. Obviously, that's why I allow them. But I also need general purpose usage of my endpoints, of my storage, of my collection. Sorry. So the setting up the storage gateway in the way that I did, and then create a map collection on top of it, makes it function very much like a version 4 endpoint, where a person can log on, they'll be dropped in their home directory, they'll be able to navigate one directory up and see all of our project space, or all the way up to the top to Scratch, and then down again to our various Scratch servers. This is how we're used to, and it was nice that I could get this set up in this manner. Okay, so once I have that storage gateway created, I make a map collection. And notice you use the string of the storage gateway, and you're making your map collection. You tell it this nice default directory equals $home, which allows them to be dropped in their home directory. And then you give a display name, which it'll be known as on the Globus Web Portal. Any questions so far? Nothing in the chat? Okay.
Nothing new yet.
Pretty straightforward. It took a little while to get that storage gateway line just the way we wanted, but now that it's there, it's easy to do. Okay, so now back on the Globus Web interface, web portal. You see there we have a new collection. Yeah. So I think that's the end of install. Oh yeah, let's go through. I'm gonna actually hop on there and let's walk through a few things.
Hey Sam.
Yes, sir.
So Ross added a comment there onto the chat that just simply said you can also use Globus groups to simplify management of guest collections.
Yeah.
Adding the user to the group gives them access to the collection.
So again, that's yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. That's good. My problem was I wanted a way. The map collection allowed me to do it in a way where everybody can hop on, right? Which is what we were looking for, to make it more like what we're used to in version 4. I imagine we'll have instances where I'll have people who want to make a guest collection or groups of people, and I'll be glad to manage that at that scale. Yeah. Let's see. There we go. Sorry. Hope that worked. Hopefully you can still see that. Oh, yeah, okay. Right. So what to look at? Okay, endpoints. So again, you can see, you can search for CHPC. You'll see we have a lot of endpoints. Some of them are just testing, others are in production. But here's the one that I made. It's functional. What I wanted to show is making a guest collection. That's a good thing. Let's see. So you need to go to the actual endpoint. So instead of searching CPC, I'm going to search for Pando. And there's that endpoint that I made. And you go to collections here at the top and add a collection. You see I have one there that I was testing yesterday. Shows my credentials. Base directory, let's drop it into Scratch, general, NFS1, my unit, Let's just call it test. Let's call it test 3, test. So you make that as the base directory, and then you could actually make something further down that you get dropped into. But I'm just going to leave it alone so that they get dropped in at that level. So I'll make that collection. And with this collection, I can do a lot of things. I can share the data from this new collection. I can transfer data from this new collection. Now I can create another one. So let's try to share this. So right now it's fairly minimal. I can add permissions to share with somebody. I'm going to pick on Brian because I know he's in there. Hey, more. Yeah. Okay. Share with his unit. Here's a collection. I can choose read or read and write, or I can make it to the user. Or I could make it to a group. Yeah. So I'm gonna add that permission, and Brian will get an email that says, "Hey, here's a collection." I can also grab the link to share, and actually, I can just click on that, and you'll see where we go. We go to exactly where I said. Even though that I set up that path as scratch general NFS1 my unit, it drops it in as if it were slash at the top of the tree, so they can't go any further up. They can only go down. Yeah. What else? Let's see. So guest collections are cool too. They're very useful for onesie twosie, for something that's ongoing, or someone who doesn't have University of Utah campus credentials, yeah, but has a Globus account of some sort. Yeah. So what else to show you? I wanted to show you, well, the console. I like this feature. This is nice. I've got one thing going. Looks like it's stopped. I did one transfer. Oh, my checksum failed. Just to show that something's working, let me go back. As you have more and more, this will like fork off to multiple endpoints, and it'll show you from endpoint A to endpoint B, and you can click on either and see how things are going. All right, let's. All right, so I can go on here and I can see that my transfer from ESNet read-only failed to checksum. I can see the event. Not sure why that failed, but you could totally look into it. Yeah, you see some statistics, subtasks, what succeeded. Looks like your throughput and how long it's been going, how much you've transferred. Yeah. For those standing up endpoints, the ESNet read-only test DTNs are fantastic. They're all over the place. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. They just have a collection of all different kinds of data. Let's go here, and let's go here. I'll show you one that is good for testing. Yeah, so that one at Sunnyvale, one at Starlight, I'm not sure where that is, one at New York, and one at CERN. And basically, they just have this suite of different size files, different types of files that you can just test throughput from there to your endpoint. Yeah. What else did I want to show? Let's see. Actually, maybe that's about it. Any questions? What did I miss? Yeah, I think that's it.
So Alan asks if there's an API to add and remove people to groups. And this kind of goes along with the boss added a URL into the chat, giving us a URL to go and see information about how groups are defined. When it was asked if the groups are Unix groups or something else, and boss clarified that they are groups inside of Globus.
Yeah, groups inside of Globus, exactly. I played with them a little bit, and I haven't had a need for them yet, so I haven't really fully looked into them. So, yeah.
So Voss also just answered that to Alan's question if there's an API. He said, unfortunately, not right now, but it is a highly requested thing that they're looking into.
Yeah. Having to sort of remake groups or hand make groups was a little tedious. If it's something that, and if I had a use where I needed this set up for somebody, I could see going through this, but I haven't had that yet, so I really haven't really played with it too much. Like these don't have anybody in them. Maybe this one does. Yeah, I started thinking about the idea, but haven't really played with it too much.
Okay, so we have another question. So Brian asks if there's any server configuration you need to perform before installing Globus. Things about the network,
sure.
Firewall settings.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't go into any of that. I'm sorry, I should have. There are a few things we do. Obviously, you want to have a nice, big, large pipe on your DTN. We do, the main thing that we configure is, if I can find that site, we configure, ESNet has some tunings that we use. The majority of them are in sysctl. Let's see if I have a window on. Actually, maybe I'll just Google search for it. That probably made you nauseous, sorry. ESNet, DTN.
Sam?
Yes, sir.
fasterdata.es.net.
Oh, that's it. Yep, that's it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so host tunings. We go through a few of these things. That's probably a little small, sorry. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Yeah. The majority of them in sysctl, the conf, or in .d, and its specific own one, if you're on version 7. Yeah, use those. We found those to be very nice, particularly for long-haul transfers across country or whatever, more than just local. They also talk about doing things like NIC tuning, where you're like pinning your NIC to a particular to a particular core. We really haven't played with that very much. It kind of seemed like the overhead to do that was above what it was worth. I don't know. And also that modern Linux OSs seem to handle that pretty well. That's probably the main two things we do. Firewall considerations. I'm open to the world, to Globus things. There's various ports. It's mostly, let's see, 2811, and then a range in the 50,000 area. But that's the majority of it, as far as tuning goes.
So Voss also shared a link, and I think Alan added it to the notes for today, to some prereqs that Globus documents off of their installation guide. So that, feel free for anybody who wants to look at that as well. Anything you'd specifically add, Sam, from the firewall angle?
No, no. It's pretty straightforward with IP tables, other than just to the Globus things. We have other data transfer protocol or applications we use, and we're open to those ports as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So a question I would kind of ask you to talk a little bit about is then, when you've been running these endpoints and watching things, under load, tell us a little bit about that. Some heavy moments, some, trending information. What have you seen from the boxes you've been running on our end?
They do pretty well. Depending on the data, actually, interesting. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, where am I at? Sorry, I'm making you all busy. Someone was moving something from, let's see. I want to go to clustered endpoint. Oh. Someone was really moving data from, where was it? Not from Exceed. Anyways, oh yeah, from Comet. I think they do pretty well. They get under a heavy load sometimes, but can easily move like that from Exceed there, from Comet, moving 1.19 gigabytes a second is fairly good throughput. Oh, sorry, that's not it. Sorry, no, I'm reading that wrong. Oh, where's the one? Someone was moving from Glade. There we go. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, Brian. It's they do just fine. Honestly, I don't look at them very much because they just work.
Well, so part of the reason I'm kind of asking this is you and I and others here have been part of a conversation, a little bit triggered because of the some of the things that others brought up about whether your DTN has local storage or is using remote storage in and of itself. You know, and so you and I have talked a little bit in the sense where, you know, our setups, the storage is remote to the DTN, meaning, you know, the DTN is a Lustre client to Lustre space, or it's NFS client to NFS space, or you know, in the cases of the S3 targets or something else at the back end, you know, it becomes a pass-through point. And we've acknowledged that there's a tax for that, you know, as compared to something like the Fiona type setups that you've talked about before, where if you're just trying to move it from one point to the other as absolutely fast as you can, there may be the advantage of.
I think that the tax is less than actually doing a double move, though. I agree. We've always thought that. We've always thought
the local storage, you might have to copy it again somewhere else. So agree. And
also the scale. We can't have local storage at the scale that people move stuff. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Okay, new question came up. So Jeff's asking is about sensitive data sets. Do they have to be handled on physically separate DTNs, or do the new controls allow you to have a DTN handle either or?
I see. We haven't had to deal with that yet. We went the route of making specific DTNs for sensitive data. And part of that was because they live inside of our protected environment. We wanted them physically separate, as well as logically separate on separate networks. Yeah, we haven't had to tackle a mixed workload, if you will.
So Vosh chimes in and simply points out that you can have sensitive and non-sensitive data on the same endpoint, but that they will be exposed by separate gateways.
Yes, that's
yeah. And so then they're on separate policies that govern the
collections. That's true. You could have different collections, I suppose, or storage gateways. That's it. Yes. We just haven't had to tackle that because we went the route of buy extra hardware. Okay.
Other questions for Sam or for the group as a whole? And then as a reminder, if you're talking or trying to ask a question, I may have muted you, so you might need to unmute you.
Well, if you think of any questions, feel free to email me, sam.liston@utah.edu. Yeah, I'm glad to answer anything or help with installation or in any way I can.
Sam, can you clarify a little bit on what backends? I mean, you alluded to the POSIX, right? Because we're doing that with the NFS and the Lustre. What other backends are we using? Have we played?
We are only using our version 4 Ceph plugin at the moment. It's the only one we've actually in the version 5 we've only paid for our standard subscription plus the high assurance. That is something is the additional plugins are a pay-for item. We've noticed that people are not using our Ceph plugin very much. The majority of them are using rclone to transfer data in and out of our object storage. So we haven't proceeded with purchase of the Ceph plugin. We have one group that uses S3 quite a bit to Amazon, and we may buy a plugin for that plugin for them to transfer data to AWS. Those are the main two. Early on, we played around with the Black Pearl plugin. That was before it was general released, and that worked well, but we decided to go a different route than using the Black Pearl. So we played with a few of them. I haven't played with the Google Drive one yet. Then again, I believe it's a pay for as well. But yeah, they're very useful if you have a need for them, a specific need.
So a little bit earlier, Alan did ask if anybody's used the Box plugin that has any anecdotal experiences to share with that, or so kind of throwing that out for anybody else if anybody has played with the Box plugin.
No, we haven't played with that one yet. Okay.
Okay, so Nathan is chiming in that they don't use the Box plugin, but he does have the Google one, and he sees somewhere in the 50 to 80 megabytes per second upload and 120-ish on the download.
Okay.
For large files. What kind of network pipe do you have on that endpoint, Nathan? So a 10 gig pipe, okay.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that the majority of our DTNs are connected at 40 gig using Mellanox ConnectX-3 cards. A couple at 10 gigabit, but and then we have 100 gig uplink to Internet 2. Oh. Yeah, we've seen throttling from Google using other tools as well. Large files are your friends for sure.
So with some of the comments about the Google Drive going on in the chat, one thing I'd say that Sam and I have stumbled into kind of in a different circumstance is, you need to understand what your path is through to some of these cloud services. For us in Utah, when we were interacting with Google early on, it went over Internet 2 to somewhere in California, and the
LA
crossover into Google space at that point was just a 10 gig link.
Yeah.
And we did run into some challenges at that point with that, where I think we got a little bit of a frowny face from them from pushing too hard. So yeah, you might need to work with your network folks if you don't have the perspective yourself, and kind of figure out, whether it's Box, Google, or whatever else, what your path looks like between here and there before you worry about whether the tool itself is, any kind of a choke point. So I'll make a plug here while we're still curious if there's any other questions we can throw out through the conversation. But please feel free to use the topic spreadsheet that we've had. I'll get that link and share it into the chat again in a moment, to suggest other topics for future systems facing presentations, things you're willing to present on, things you'd like to hear somebody else present on. It doesn't matter. We just like to see that perspective expressed. you know, for any of these presentations, we had one group ask if it was okay to share the announcements out to people who aren't on the list. Absolutely is the answer. Feel free to, you know, share anything about our systems facing group for anybody who might be interested.
Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. So we'll, if there's nothing else, appreciate everybody for their participation, and we'll call it close a little early today. And again, thanks for attending.